So yeah, welcome everyone. Feeling really good to attempt to give you the tiniest flavor of what happened last week. We'll do a little bit of a fire hose and still it's going to be nowhere close to what actually happened. We apologize ahead of time that it will be completely impossible to tell you what actually happened, but we will at least try and give you the feeling of it. And I did create a slideshow with lots of pictures, so that'll maybe help. But I mean, what do you think? Do you think it's possible to describe what happened? No. So it's like that saying that if you aim for the eagle and miss, you might hit the rock. But if you aim for the moon and miss, you might hit the eagle. We're going to aim for the eagle this time and just hope that it doesn't like clank off a rock somewhere. We know that we're not getting to the full deal. So, but what we are really excited about is that, as some of you I've already been hearing in other channels, the Refi Barichara event that happened last week really is like epoch setting, or opening a whole new realm of capacity and direction, and like a new phase of our lives, and a lot of stuff, big stuff is what it is. And we're going to give you a flavor of that with pictures and stories today. And what I think will be helpful is to actually go into like the slideshow and show you some pictures and tell some stories. And then from there, we can start getting like context setting together about what this means and where we go from here. But before we do, is there anything you'd like to say before we start?
I think that's a good summary. and I'll chime in later with some stories.
Yeah, we'll occasionally go like this. Like this is my mind was blown. We'll just like make that gesture every now and then. Because as you'll see just from the way that I'll tell stories with pictures, you'll start to see how the weaving process, the weaving among people, the weaving among worlds, the weaving among different parts of the landscapes in Colombia, other things that are all happening around this event that occurred last week. And so with that in mind, Gail will have to catch whatever happens at the end of the hour, as I see from your chat, because I think we may go over an hour today. But let me go ahead and share screen and we can show you some pictures. So first things first is that this is a group of all the participants on the last day. If you couldn't gather from the photo, they all like each other. We formed lasting friendships, and it was truly incredible. This photo is taken at a hotel called La Nube Posada, which is actually the first and oldest hotel in Barichara. And it's where we held our afternoon design sessions. There were about 60 people who attended the event, and it was a real mix of people from all over the planet, local people leading regenerative projects, and local people who were like our bus drivers or whose farms we visited, people who didn't speak English but still felt like they had to be a part of it because it was just too powerful what was going on for them to feel like they could stay on the sidelines. And so you can see the name that I'm giving to this update is Earthing the Bioregional Activators, and we'll get to that. So just to say that we see this as the beginning of a new phase of Earth regeneration work. This event, it's symbolic of something that's happening at a larger scale in the world. Yeah, so first thing is, as you probably already guessed, people gathered from all over the world and arrived right here into the great northern turn of the Andes in Barichara, Colombia. And our whole purpose of this 5-day experience was to create an immersion, like to really weave people into the community in a real world project, where project really means a network of local projects, where the purpose is to regenerate a territory at the scale of 500,000 hectares. And we'd shown this graphic in a previous talk that I'd given. I think it might have been the last Barichara updates that we did before the event, that we knew that this Refi Barichara, by the way, Refi just means regenerative finance. So there was like traditional finance, and then there's decentralized finance, or DeFi, and then regenerative finance is ReFi. So there's this meme in the world of crypto and Web3 called DeFi or refi, which is where that phrase comes from. And refi Barichara was this mixing of people from the outside and locals in Colombia, which means mostly locals in Barichara, but also locals from companies like Crepes and Waffles, which as some of you in Colombia would know, and people doing regenerative work in other parts of Colombia who joined us. And that we really wanted to root this whole thing in place, even though the majority of people coming were from the outside. And I would say we were successful. We did decolonized, regenerative and not extractive community weaving of outsiders and locals all in the span of 5 days. It was sort of incredible. And so first thing I would say is that when the event was starting, people from all over the world started to arrive, including our darling Mila. Those of us who know Mila from Earth Regenerators, this is her in the yellow hat. What you can't fully appreciate until you're physically in the same room with Mila is, first of all, her hugs are as good as that picture looks. She's kind of incredible. And that Mila is actually an indigenous elder from Indonesia. And she's like a wisdom holder. She has a capacity for bringing light and bringing healing and bringing groundedness to a community that, as great as she is online and Zoom calls, there's just no comparison to what happens when she's physically in the space with you. And in this photo on the right, I want to really point out that the person who's wearing that like light blue shawl or towel that he's got wrapped around his shoulders, that's Will Ruddick. 4 days before Refi Barichara, he sent a message saying he just bought his airline ticket to join us from Kenya. And he's from a group called Grassroots Economics, where for the last almost 20 years, they have helped create more than 300 community currencies and stimulate solidarity-based economic development through many places in East Africa, primarily focused in Kenya and Tanzania. And to have someone like him there next to the person to his right, in this maroon shirt, it's Alex Corin, who's part of the Regenerative Community Land Trust group that came from the Denver Boulder area of Colorado. And then our beloved Paula in the background behind them. Then as people started arriving, we just felt this sense of profound capacity to co-create that involves many different skill sets and very powerful experiences and histories. And just in this photo, you can already get a sense of, community-based economics in East Africa, an Indonesian medicine woman and shaman, someone who works on regenerative community land trusts. That a lot of people misunderstood this event to be a crypto event. And while I tried as much as I could to tell people that's what that wasn't, what it was going to be, a lot of people still believed that and were shocked by what it was, which was about, 1 million times cooler than that, what actually happened. By the way, Jill just joined us. When we're done with the slideshow, she could share her own reflections if she likes. Someone who's here who works with value flows and holochain that's joined us in Barichara for a while. We hope she sticks around for a while, but more on that. Before the event even started, as you can see here, we were blending the locals and the outsiders. This is the weekly language exchange that happens on Saturdays. So this was, the event started on a Monday. This was the Saturday before at a little cafe called Baba, which is in a garden. And what you can already see here is people trying to learn Spanish, people trying to learn English, and lots of cultural exchanges occurring. And for me, this image, Evan raised his hand and Evan's giving us a peace symbol here in the image. Is there something you want to say real quick, Evan?
Yeah, well, one of my favorite things about the event was the way that synchronicity was just flowing wildly, and events seemed to ripple and connect with each other. And so as a result of this language exchange, there's a local woman named Ruby who had just come to Barichara for a film festival, and she wanted to settle here and get land and regenerate it, and then continue her natural medicinal cosmetics business. But she couldn't afford the ticket. So I got this grant money, so I invited her to come to the conference. And now she has plugged into the Barichara community as a place to both obtain local medicinal plants for her business and to sell it at Casa Común, which is kind of a shop where local artisans sell their things. And it just seems to throughout the entire experience, someone described it as being held, and it really felt like the universe was conspiring to make things work together and flow for this event. And so this language exchange that you see here was one of many kind of starting points or branching off points for that chain of events.
Thank you, Evan. And if you see there in the plaid shirt that Tyler, to his left is Ruby, to her left is me. And Ruby was a significant, she's Colombian, but she also speaks English. She's able to fully participate in the event and is like a medicine healer who's going to help create the medicinal garden. And yeah, great. Thanks for sharing that, Evan, because that, what you just described, that synergistic way that there was flow of relationships. And we'll get to the magic of how the space was held in a moment, because we had medicine women holding the entire process for us. And it was the entire event was like, there was a shamanic experience, and Refi Barichara was a subset of it. Even though Refi Barichara looks like the point of emphasis, it was actually almost like the lens in a telescope, where the lens in the telescope doesn't have any value unless light shines through it. And the light shining through it was the shamanic women holding the space. So this was a big part of what this, definitely not only a crypto event was. I just want to bring everyone's attention to the way that we started the event itself on Monday. Was I created a Google Earth fly-through where we showed how to orient people to the context and introducing a way of doing like bioregional tourism and bioregional education, which started with an image like this, where you could see that blue dot is where Barichara is, where there's a deforested plateau. You can roughly see where it starts in the South American continent. And I won't show you the whole fly through, but from there we zoom in to see the regional climate system. So it really used a multi-level or a fractal way of bringing people into the landscape and talking to them how we define our bioregion in terms of the regional climate system, the 3 lines of mountain ranges, the river systems embedded within it, and so forth. And then we zoomed into about 20 local projects, Bioparque Moncora being one of the better known, of course, and they were all embedded on the landscape like this. So I created this immersive experience of creating context, which was how we began the event itself. And I just wanted you to have a feeling of what this was like, to imagine flying into and flying across the landscape with a presentation that helped grounded us into place. And then we were actually held, like I said, by medicine women. And there was a fire that was held somewhere else in the territory. And a group of women held the fire for the entire 5 days of the event and then 2 additional days beyond. So for 7 days, there was a group of women sitting at a fire somewhere in the landscape, helping the landscape receive the intentions and the love of the outsiders as we arrived. And I think everyone who participated in the event, so Evan could speak more, Jill who's sitting to our left could speak more, anyone who's on this call that was at the event will tell you that we felt the presence of these women in this fire, and it was transformational for the event. But also on the opening day, we had Makaya, who's the woman here with the singing bowls, lead an opening ritual, an opening ceremony, where she used vibrational energy to connect us to our bodies, to connect us to shared intention, and to connect us to the territory. And this level of intentionality, and I'll just make it a joke now, and the event that was not a crypto event, where we were inventing a way of living regeneratively at a bioregional scale, including outsiders and locals, was held by these bookends of a ritual at the beginning, a ritual at the end, and a ceremonial fire holding the entire process. The fire was lit before the event started. The fire was closed after the event ended. Some participants of the event went to the fire to close it with the medicine women. Yesterday, as you'll see with later photos, we had a closing and debrief where the medicine women met with community leaders, met with the people who were at the event who stayed afterwards, and the weaving continues to this day. The weaving continues right now as I'm looking at Jill smiling while I'm giving the presentation. And so I want to stress that the fire that was held included 4 sacred plants. And what you can see here, this candle was initially lit from the sacred fire and then brought to us, and we relit the candle each day that we held the process in the hotel, La Nube. And you can see on the left are cacao seeds. cacao seeds that are used for making chocolate. In the bottom center is the native or the indigenous form of cotton. On the right is a local kind of corn. And there's a stick there in the background you can barely see, which is called Palo Santo, or the holy wood, which all of these together are ceremonial artifacts that helped the plants in the landscape to speak to us and to receive our intentions as an event. And this little image is just meant to signify the depth and the thoughtfulness that went into all of the ceremonies. During the event itself, when we were in La Nube, which is this beautiful hotel with a big open courtyard, this is during one of the coffee breaks. And I just want you to start getting a sense that you can see people with different skin tones, with different kinds of clothes, different styles of dress. Here are local people together with outsiders, together with people that actually are born in Barichara and are from the indigenous culture. They're descendants of the Guane people. And we're all blending together from the very beginning. And so because we held the entire event using an emergent style of facilitation, which is, those of you who know me, that's like the only way I roll. Several people who were at the event had never experienced emergent facilitation before. And I would use that mind-blowing gesture on my head. Their minds were completely blown because they had no idea that we could have an agenda where every day at 2:00 in the afternoon, no one knows what we're going to do for the next 4 hours. And then I would facilitate co-creative emergence. To toot my own horn, it was fucking awesome. It was amazing. I'm not gonna lie, it was kick-ass. And it was kick-ass because we had well-designed immersion experiences in the mornings, leading into design sessions in the afternoon. We had medicine women holding processes, including, we actually broke a real-world trauma cycle during the event. Like, I'm not kidding. God, we could talk about this afterwards. But this is an example of what happened in the mornings. Now, I'm only going to show photos from the field sites that I led the groups because I didn't have time to gather photos from all the others. But this was one of the groups coming to a syntropic agroforestry demonstration site that's at a place called Huerta Comunitaria, which is a community garden, which was set up for food resilience during the pandemic and has about 30 families that are involved in maintaining it. And so each morning, a different group of people until all participants, throughout 3 days, each group went to one of 3 field sites each day. And one of the groups would come to this Syntropic Agriculture Center and learn this field site. And then we would take them to Las Albercas to see the future site of the biopark of the Barichara Ecoversity. And then we'd take them up to a place called Guaymaro, which is another reforestation, bioconstruction, permaculture site that's connected to the Ecoversity. And the other 2 field visits were similarly integrated, where people would experience several projects in the territory as patterns of territorial weaving. And so we created a pedagogical process of experiences and design sessions that beautifully wove locals and outsiders around bioregional regeneration. And I would say it was highly successful. It was a model that should be replicated everywhere. And of course, we knew that the people coming here would not know what it means to feel the territory unless they literally felt the territory. And so we had them help prepare a future syntropic agriculture site for the community garden as part of their field site visit. There's Evan on the right with his kick-ass hat. Evan, you're rocking it with the hat. The woman here on the left with the trowel, that's Darina. And she is involved in creating crypto-based tools for helping campesino farmers in Colombia to transition from traditional or industrial agriculture to regenerative agroforestry with coffee plantations. So again, crypto, but not crypto. The person way over on the left in that white t-shirt is Sam Bennett, who works for Regen Network, helping to do carbon credits in carbon sequestration as an ecological asset. And just to give you a sense again of the diversity and kinds of people that were present with us, the guy with the hat on there in the middle looking toward us, but his face is down, is Dumpa, or Juan Pablo, who's a Colombian man who works with community currencies, open collaboration and open innovation processes, and has actually created a cryptocurrency, a stable coin, that can allow cryptocurrency to be transformed into pesos to connect with the mainstream economy of Colombia, to create bridges between decentralized financial tools regenerative projects and the extractive, terrible nation state of, well, pick your nation state. Colombia is one of 200. And so these kinds of people and their thinking were present to us throughout the whole event. And having Colombians alongside someone like Evan from the US, someone like Darina, who is from the Netherlands, I believe, if I remember correctly, one of those Scandinavian countries, but she's been in Colombia for a while, and others from around the world who are there with us. It was sort of amazing to see how well we blended in the space. And then during the afternoons, we had these design sessions and open space for conversations. And I just want you to get a feel for how familial it was, how friendly we all were. That here's Jeremy sitting in the center, who's sort of like anywhere around him is the life of a party because of his energy. And what I want you to just notice is that everyone's in conversations that are continually in a flow. And we held different kinds of breakout sessions. And then between the breakouts, we had amazing food cooked by local chefs. And 100% of the money for the event was given to local people. We raised about $4,000 in ticket sales, had $1,500 donated to us, spent $5,600 on the event, which created a transformational experience for 60 participants, and all of the money went to local people. So this is also a regenerative economy model of how to run an event. So there were lots of interesting things to say about that part as well. And I just want you to start feeling the weaving of people and the energy of the space. One of the things that happened was each afternoon we presented a local project where we invited a local person to present it. When Natalia Ortiz, who's one of our community leaders in the territory, she's Colombian, she presented on the Territorial Foundation and how we're creating institutional capacity for bioregional governance, which triggered the traumas of a few people in the room to start bringing up colonialism and extraction and being really worried the Territorial Foundation might be extractive and not really listening to all the ways we were safeguarding against that, but it actually beautifully opened the space of pain and healing and leading to Carlos Gomez. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Carlos just laid it out raw of what it's like to be in Colombia, where the state of Colombia, the government itself, sends out government-sponsored death squads and kills people for Monsanto. And kills people for narco traffickers, et cetera, et cetera. And so this way of creating governance, I mean, like we watched a movie on Wednesday night called La Paz Anónima, the Anonymous Peace, where for about 40 years, the people of this territory indiscriminately killed each other as the most violent place in Colombia during a time where you had to work hard to be the most violent place in Colombia. And the state, meaning the police and the government, were nowhere to be found in the story. It was as if they were just in the Wild West. Watching this video of like 40 years of neighbors killing neighbors, nothing was said about the police. Nothing was said about the government because it just did not exist. If the government came, they would have just been enacting violence too, just as bad or worse as the locals. And so to understand that when we're trying to create bioregional governance and someone says, but have you thought of this? Could you create consensus in the community? And Carlos is like, wait a minute. You guys have no idea what the violence was like here. You have no idea. To have consensus would mean to enable all that murdering to keep happening. We actually need a protected process. And so there was a lot of delicate conversation that grew from this. And it created exactly the kind of openness and vulnerability we needed for the conversations that came later. So I just want to say, it wasn't like Natalia's up there patting herself on the back. Look how awesome our Territorial Foundation is. It was like, look at how we're creating territorial governance. Oops, we triggered a bunch of traumas. Okay, let's just trigger even more by saying how bad Colombia actually was in the last century and how important trauma healing is. And then that got woven in an absolutely incredible and beautiful way. But just naming that, again, this was not a crypto event. This kind of thing was happening every day. And then, of course, I just want to honor Antonio, who I believe is still with us on the call, that this event only happened because Antonio, who has a very special place in the crypto world, I was just sitting and watching its patterns. And Antonio, if you're there, if you want to just unmute your mic and say something. Antonio has been talking about bioregional blockchains and similar kinds of nerdy phrases that most people don't understand for a couple years now. And when he came up to me in January and said, you know, between Cosmoverse and DevCon, we could have a satellite event in Barichara. That's where this event was born. And I just want to give full credit where credit's due. So he's looking really content here in the community garden because he just gets to watch this happen and participate in it after being the meme seed of the whole process. And I just wanted to name that this is something that grows into a much larger field of many changes, that the field of change is so big, he saw it coming a year ago. And that's why this event is actually historic. It wasn't 60 people in Barichara. It was a meeting of worlds to create a new model of development. And so it's big what happened here. And when we were in breakout groups like this one, this was a group that formed. If you look there in the back, the guy with like the long hair and the beard and that ball cap, that's Christian. Christian's a guy who embodies what this conversation was about, which is how do we regenerate ourselves by connecting with ancient technologies like medicine ceremonies and traditional indigenous wisdom? And how does that relate to trauma healing? That bald looking guy to his left is Thomas, who's a really sweet, like agroforestry permaculture designer from Arkansas. And here in this like, you know, pink and yellow shirt in the front, he's looking away from us is Felipe, who's a local Colombian guy who does peace transformation work. This group was talking about how to regenerate humans to regenerate landscapes. And there was another group at the same time that was talking about how to unravel the power dynamics of power over, oppression, domination, suppression, to create power with and co-creative processes. While there was another group talking about bridging worlds to create collaborative funding models for those who have funding platforms to bring funding to local projects, which of course needs this regenerative human development and which needs this decolonization of power. And these three different groups, just to give you a sense of how the breakout groups were working, every afternoon we had emergent self-organized conversations like these. We called them design sessions. We were designing how to form relationships with each other to be able to co-create. Those of you who have done pro-social processes in Earth Regenerators know what we mean by that. Those who didn't, well, after this event, they knew, or at least had an experience of it. And this was just, again, it was happening throughout. And so this is the group that was talking about how to bridge between worlds to create collaborative funding platforms, just to get a sense. And that guy there in the back with the flowers on his shirt with the kind of curly black hair is Nadim, who is he's an ambassador from Seeds. So those of you know the Seeds community. The guy that's sitting here kind of in the middle on the left in front of the window with the dark blue shirt, that's Dan Cotabe. He's from Mexico and works with Giveth, which is a crowdfunding and crowd philanthropy platform of cryptocurrencies. And this guy on the left there with the hat on is Yoop, who's one of our local people who has a regenerative project in the community. And they're all sitting and talking about how do we collaborate to create solutions together when we all come from different worlds, which was a major theme of the event. The event came to an end in two parts. On Thursday night, because we wanted to do it in the evening, we had a closing ceremonial fire. And then Friday morning, we had a design session for next steps. And what I want to emphasize around this fire is that there were the medicine women with the fire in the territory, and they actually brought hot coals from that fire and used them to start this fire. And that man there who's like kneeling in front of the fire with the drum, his name's Breno. He's a personal hero to everyone at the event, because little did we know that for 10 years, he's been a centropic agriculture teacher in Brazil. He's part of a group called EcoNavi, which has already formed a digital platform to coordinate between about 200 regenerative projects in Brazil. Can you imagine? 200 projects in Brazil alone. Of course, it's all in Portuguese. We don't speak Portuguese. We have no idea it exists. And when he came here, he was like stepping into our centropic systems, changing them and teaching people. Like, yeah, he was just like, we were just like, bless you, Breno. Can we keep you forever? We just want you to live in our centropic agriculture systems. And here he is warming a drum and holding the fire with us. And this integration across cultures of a centropic agriculture teacher from Brazil, speaking in Spanish and English as well, talking with local people, helping teach people centropic agriculture, holding the space, participating in ceremony. This kind of blending of worlds happened for all of us throughout the whole event. But on the final day, something really incredible happened. I wanted to show this picture because to me, this was a moment that had actually brought me to tears. So you can see there in the back on the left, with the red hair is Vicky, the woman with the silver hair is Camila, our beloved founders of Bioparque Moncora. The man without very much hair behind Vicky is actually her son, Mateo, who moved to Barichara about a month ago and is a musician, and actually he's like a DJ and a music teacher and just an all-around cool guy. What this group was doing was they gathered together to figure out, how do we create the financial supports from around the world to create permanent or at least sustained funding for the Learning Center in Centropic Agriculture and for Bioparque Moncora? So what we went from talking about how to activate landscape investment models and catalyze transformation of bioregions to looking at 2 concrete real world projects and figuring out how to fund and support them. Now, the reason this meeting was so special to me was that I know Camila and Vicky have been helping the Bioparque to exist and move it along for almost 14 years with pretty much zero support. So this moment is the first time they ever had a support group around them to figure out how to fund the Bioparque. Can you imagine the Bioparque for 14 years without a support group like this to figure out how to fund them? So for me to sit here and watch, that's Jan over here on the right in the black shirt. He's part of our pledge community. He's in Earth Regenerators. He's an all-around awesome guy. That's Jill, who's there kind of in the middle in the back, who's sitting next to us at the moment, sitting to the left of Camila. That's Penny in the front. You can see the back of her head. And this is a group of people that are trying to figure out, how do we sustain 2 local projects? And if we have a refi event in the future, how do the outsiders solve real problems for real people in the local community during the event? And that's what they were trying to figure out how to do. This happened after the event officially ended because the full moon was on Sunday, and Rachel and I like to smoke tobacco on the full moon. So we invited everyone to the ceremonial site that Penny and Rachel are maintaining in the Bioparque that's right next to the food forest. And we had a tobacco ceremony on Sunday. That was not officially part of the event, but here we go. And you can't see her in this picture. Well, you kind of can. Elise is there hanging out to the left of Rachel at the moment. And in this moment, what I want to emphasize is that we were woven. Even though everyone here, except if you want, you could say, I'm local in a way, because I've lived here for 3 years. Penny's local in a way that she's been here for half a year learning Spanish and relating to the community. But really, all of us are sort of outsiders, except we are doing an indigenous practice within the territory together, directly communing with the land. And there was nothing weird about that. There was no cultural appropriation in it. There was something that was actually earnest and honest about it, and the way we were able to do it after the event. And I just want to describe that that's something that's weird that most people can't achieve. So it's kind of amazing we were able to pull that off. And to me, that really indicates something about what happened during the event. But then, oh my God, Ricardo Palomino, who's Colombian but lives in Venezuela, who happened to be in Colombia. He's friends with Mila. Mila told him about the event. They met in Pro-Social. Like, what the hell? Somewhere else on the planet. No, I'm sorry. They met in the Regenesis groups teachings that was part of the Capital Institute's regenerative leadership program that John Fullerton runs. And Mila advises John Fullerton and advises the Regenesis group and advises everyone behind the scenes. And Ricardo heard about us because Mila told him to come. And then Ricardo came, and Ricardo's heart was torn open. I use the word torn like it was violent, like something broke inside of him for something new to be born. And his family comes from a place called Mogotes, which is about a 2-hour drive from Barichara, but is within our regional climate system. It's part of our bioregion. It's the red marker here on the map. The blue marker is Barichara. On Monday, Carlos and Maritza, who are 2 local community leaders in Barichara, asked Penny, Elise, and I, if we would like to go to visit Ricardo's family's land in Mogotes, where we visited this place where the pond is. This is the next bioparque. This is the next syntropic agriculture project outside of Barichara. We went to a place that has its own history of violence, its own unique ecology and culture that is a subset of the bioregion. And we were weaving to another part of the territory as a direct outcome of the event. The event was Monday through Friday. And then the following Monday, 3 days later, we are in Mogotes, connecting Barichara and Mogotes through syntropic agriculture and cultural trauma healing for the bioregion. And it's going to happen. We made the connection. And as we said, estamos en el tejido. We are in the web and we're not leaving it now. And this level of integration that continued every day up to today, it's still happening, is something that occurred during the event. And then yesterday, this is at the home of Natalia and Yvonne. That's Natalia on the left standing next to me. And what I want to describe is this, that there was a woman at the event named Kate. Kate is from Australia originally, but she is living in Colombia, in Medellin, and she is taking a master's at the University of International Cooperation, which is the group I was working with at one point in time in Costa Rica. And she's taken this master's in regenerative development. One of her professors is a woman named Melina Angel, who is also the professor of Paula, who some of you know, our Romanian friend Paula. And Melina is a dear friend of mine. Her uncle used to be someone who lived in the village of Guane here. And what happened was this. Kate, on the last day, sent a little testimonial to Yvonne saying, I was so changed by this event, I wanted to tell you what happened. And Yvonne was so struck by the testimonial. She said, maybe because about a dozen people from the event are staying long-term afterwards. Some of them are here, like Jill is sitting next to me. And she said, what if we invited them to give a testimonial? Oh, wait, what if we invited the medicine women who held the fire to give a testimonial of what happened to them? Oh, wait, what if we invited people from the community whose sites we visited? Oh, wait, what if we invited people from the Territorial Foundation? And next thing you know, this tiny intimate lunch was 40 people having this massive party yesterday. That led to this circle of sharing where we sat together like a planetary Pachamama, talking about how we were all transformed by the event. And it was everything from the local medicine women to indigenous people representing indigenous cultures from other places, to people representing the Regen Network and similar kinds of technology platforms and tools. Just all of it. It was all there and present. And we wove together yesterday, and we continue the weave right now. As all of this was happening in the last day of the event itself, I gave a presentation with slides that some of you have seen, like this one, which shows how we could create the Barichara Regeneration Fund by saying we now have 20 to 30 projects. We actively wove them during the event. And we're creating a platform cooperative to activate entire landscapes, fund them, help support the formation of landscape partnerships, help them to achieve bioregion to bioregion learning capacities while creating their own bioregional learning centers. All of you in Earth Regenerators will recognize this is the design pathway for regenerating Earth. We embodied exactly this process during and after the event. And so what we birthed was the capacity to implement this. For the first time ever, probably on the planet, grassroots groups can activate integrated landscape models for bioregional regeneration. And it was born in Barichara last week. And this includes more technological things like this, which says, what if there was a data management system that would let you track all the energy flows of the Earth system, track and evolve the supply chains of the human economy, engage in regenerative value creation on real land projects, and track the nutrient cycles of ecosystem health to create an integrated, developing bioregional scale regenerative economy. And what's beautiful about this cartoon image, this mock-up that I created, is that every single piece of this was represented by expertise and people and projects at the event last week. The 60 people at our event could build this. And we all saw it together on the last day of the event because I showed them this graphic. And that means we can create a planetary network of these bioregional projects with this level of sophistication and complexity. And those of you who know the common land investment model, we introduced this. What we actually want to do now is figure out how to create grassroots processes, to create grassroots economies that can bootstrap their own 20-year, 100,000 hectare or larger integrated landscape management models for bioregional regeneration. That's a big word. That sentence I just said is, we birthed at Refi Barichara the ability to design and facilitate the embodiment of this model. We could go to Osa Peninsula, we could go to other landscapes and help them set this up with all of the technology supports, with all of the solidarity economic supports, with the indigenous support systems, like all of it, we would help them know how to do it. And this was a graphic that I used to show what happened during the event to show what is possible. This is focused on Barichara, because in Barichara, we raised $21,000 from Gitcoin. We've raised several $1,000s from Giveth, and someone from Giveth was at the event. We have a pledge community that's raised about $45,000. The Regen Foundation is giving us a community endowment of Regen tokens. This was just to show that we have already blended the funding models between crypto and traditional funding. We already did it. We've already acquired the land for Oriente del Agua. We now have the money to acquire the land of Las Albercas and are finishing the purchase. We are weaving 20 to 30 projects in the territory. And we can create liquidity pools of multi-capital flow. We can create collaborative finance models. We can create research alliances, learning communities, and bioregional partnerships. And this ability to do this was born last week, which leads to what is happening, what's actually being created. This is a little sneak peek, because Penny and I are not getting very much sleep right now. We're still catching up. We're about to share with all of you what Bioregional Activators is, but we are creating the community space for this thing that was born to continue and manifest in the world. And you can just see the sentence. We are deeply committed to the activation of regenerative bioregions at the landscape scale. And so we have been holding, curating, stewarding the ability for this to happen. I think each of us who participated for many years on our own personal journeys, and for the first time, maybe in the history of the planet, the composition of humans with the level of trust and friendship came into being in a place where this can actually occur. And so that's what we're doing from here on out. So let's talk about this. So you can see, we're like right in the midst of something absolutely huge. And it'll become more and more apparent how big it is as we implement it in the months and years ahead. I'll say one thing for those of you who are familiar with Eco Agriculture Partners project called 1,000 Landscapes for 1 Billion People. By the way, today, Benji announced that on the 22nd of October, there will be a discussion about it in Bioregional Catalysts, including the flaws of their model and why they've only gotten to 15, which means there are 985 more. And so just as sort of like a container for the story, we want to create the collaborative space to manifest the other 985 landscapes in the next 7 years by 2030. And that's what we see being born here, which is why this is, I'm just going to F-bomb this, okay? This is fucking huge. This is so big, all right? So I'm going to shut the hell up because I've talked a lot. I want to invite anyone who was at the event who would like to share. I know Evan was here, Penny was here, Jill, there's Jill. I can turn my computer so you can see her. Was here, Lilian was here, Will's on the call, he was here, Antonio was here. So anyone who is here that would like to share about your experience, please do. I'd love to invite you to just jump in and also raise hands for questions and comments. But anyone who's here that would like to share, just turn on your mic and jump on in. Anyone? Penny?
Sure.
So you're backlit, so it's hard to.
So there's a lot I could talk about, obviously. There's like two things that are just coming to me right now, of what I sensed or felt. What I felt was kind of like huge worlds coming together. So like the world of the Web3 world, which is actually a lot of people doing a lot of work. And they're all wanting to, do good things, the regenerative finance people. So this huge world doing all this work, and then these people coming into the territory with on the ground projects. So like the regenerative work happening on the ground, integrating with this Web3 world. So I felt like this merging of worlds, and I'm seeing that happen, and there's a lot of these kind of spaces, and it's starting to happen, this integration. And that's something I haven't ever felt. What I've been feeling is like I don't like to use this word, but hope, or like a possibility, like I can feel the manifestation actually happening. Like it's happening not just in the ethers or in our minds, but the tangible manifestation. That this is actually possible, that we could do this. So that's one part that I would share. The other part I want to share more about is the women holding the space with the fire, and how I can't even describe how powerful that was. It was like this field it was so coherent. Like the field was incredibly coherent. It held through this like perturbation. I don't know.
There was an outbreak of trauma by a person who was in great pain that could have interfered with the space of what we were doing, but instead was fully integrated.
Yeah. So there was not only the women holding the field with the fire, holding the space, but then there was Mila inside the space, Yvonne and Natalia, all these like medicine women, Margarita, and they facilitated a process and invited this person into the process as one of our breakout groups. So it was sort of like, it didn't interrupt the flow of everything else, but it was integrated into it. And actually healed. I mean, this woman, I think something happened where I don't even know how to describe it. It was like settled.
Her survival response,
Yeah.
that like fear that I'm dying sort of thing, calmed in her being.
Yeah, and it wasn't about her. It was like the process itself was just about trauma cycles and how we get into these triangles of trauma. And so she was participated in that and got to feel the different aspects of different roles. And
along with everyone else, 20 people participated.
Yeah. So it was like the field held, the coherence held even through that. And it didn't get sidetracked or go off track. And that was, I think that's for me, it felt like a combination of just being held in this incredible like depth of the depth of the medicine women, and then having people in the space who could hold the trauma work. So I think that's what I'll share for now. There's so much more, but maybe Lilian, do you want to share anything, or do you?
Or Jill.
Jill, I mean.
Yeah, Lilian.
Jill. Sorry.
Jill's here.
I'll share a little bit. Basically, I don't know. I'm really excited about like all the people that came together, and I'm excited about what's going to come out of this. And I'm really looking forward to seeing a lot of that. So that's really where I am right now. And there's probably more that I can say, but I guess I'm the kind of person that a lot of that will come out in conversation with people and more on like a one-on-one sort of person. So I'm looking forward to this. This is great. And I guess I could, I don't know, should I say more about,
if you like
what
you can say more about like
coming into
no, I think so. I think that'd be beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, so I actually sort of almost like told I was going to this, but there was a couple of people online that were like chatting on Twitter, and like I didn't really have a ton of time to pay attention to like all the conversation that was happening, and so I did just see that like one person was like, "Hey, Jill would be a great fit for this," in like one of the other chats internally into the org that I'm working with. And it just ended up being, I guess, this emergent thing that I was the one that was going to come here. And I totally thought that it was going to be like a bunch of crypto people here. And I was very, very afraid of what that might mean. And like, and then when I got here and got to the opening of it and heard, oh, there's a sacred fire that's being held, I was like, oh, wonderful. It was just it soothed my soul to know that was the case. And yeah, and I think I could feel it. Right, it was that kind of environment. That like I got into town, things were just sort of lining up in terms of, if I needed transportation or something like that, things just happened the way they needed to happen. So it was a great event full of synchronicities in that regard. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you weren't the only one who was surprised by the juxtaposition of expectation and reality. I wonder if anyone else who was present would like to share. Antonio, Will, Lilian. Yeah, Antonio, jump in.
I'm coming, fellow house Bogota. I want to share kind of three things at kind of different levels. The first was when I came in July. It was funny because like I think only Joe kind of knew what was going on or what kind of potentially could happen. And so as I'm talking with people and especially like, for example, Margarita, so much fear, uncertainty, and doubt around these ideas. And it was just really funny because when we came back last week, the women, the local women, Yvonne, Natalia, Margarita, it started to dawn on them what was actually happening. And it was really, really special to see how much they warmed up, as well as all of the rich person-to-person conversations that happened. And I felt like there was so much healing for everybody there. And like, it wasn't even about the technology. I think that was like the last thing we talked about. So seeing how that transformation around making it human scale was so powerful. And the second layer is, so we're here in Bogota now, and there's, I think, maybe 15 of us who traveled from Refi Barichara here. And we are so tight. We are like a SEAL Team 6 of regenerates. And we need that coherence and cohesion as we're going through this massive event, which is DevCon, which is kind of like the primetime main event. And it's really fascinating because I've been in this community for so many years saying these things where nobody would pay any attention, because if it's not about the tech, then it's not important. And so now, given, post-pandemic, post-market crash, where everybody has kind of gone through a cycle of self-discovery, now we're finally getting to the point where the broader crypto community is starting to wake up to the importance of regeneration. So it's really fantastic to see people who like I've never met before, and I'm talking with them, they're like, wow, we were following Refi Barichara, like that's amazing. And the amount of visibility that we got in the global community, the global refi community especially, everybody was getting some serious FOMO. So what's happening now as we go through kind of like there's events happening here in Bogota, and we're getting to spread the story. People are tuning in, and everything is starting to click into place. So scale 3 is what comes next. And it's like, oh, wow, we got to do this everywhere. And it can feel a little overwhelming. But it's exciting because people are starting to take more leadership and more initiative on their own. So we were at the Sustainable Blockchain Summit event last night, hosted by Filecoin Green, and it's kind of like, you know, the traditional carbon credit marketplace, PhDs, like kind of what you would consider to be the institutional players. And we're chatting. Mayeli calls me over, introduces me to this woman, Lena, who does coral reef restoration, and is uploading like basically generative art designs around coral reefs as NFTs on OpenSea. And basically from that conversation, they want to do a Refi Mahawal event in Mexico, which is where I got my dive certification. And it's like, I tried to do this permaculture pop-up there 2-3 years ago. And so it's really fascinating to be invited back. And I would love to go, we'll see what the schedule's like, but to see the self-organizing initiatives taking place by people who went through the Refi Barichara experience is like, okay, this is what success looks like. So I think, you know, how do we measure success for these events? Because like oftentimes people leave an event feeling like drained, and everybody leaving Refi Barichara felt uplifted because there was no baggage to carry. And now we're even stronger. We're just going higher and higher and higher. And yeah, it's just like, it's amazing. We have a family now where we didn't have before.
Word, man. I
And
feel
Will's having a blast. Will's having the time of his life.
yeah, we'll get ready because we're packing our bags for Kenya at some point. But anyway, jump on in.
Hey.
Will, looks like your connection's kind of weak.
My internet's
Maybe turn off your.
Yeah, turn off your video and try that. Yeah,
yeah.
it's going in and out a little.
How about now?
That's better.
Test.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, it's just saying that a lot. See how that's all working. I don't know. Is it too bad, guys? You can't hear me.
Yeah, it's coming out kind of bad, which is a bummer because like Will was a real highlight of the group. Will, you're famous. We love you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're coming through better now. Maybe try.
It's been nice here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been hanging out with Dumpa a lot. I'm going to go see his tech company here in Bogota. And so just and we also found a connection to the telecoms here. So like that simple little USSD SMS version of like creating little trade networks where you don't need internet could be up in a month. I mean, it doesn't really take that long. And so that's fun for us to have, you know, it's just open source code. And so that it's fun. And so I'm enjoying, like, this is kind of the first country we've been in where it's like, it's so rich in terms of like Bogota, the tech scene, as well as like all the stuff you guys are doing. There's just so much good stuff going on. And yeah, it just seems like everything's just ready. And, you know, just to even, you know, for you guys to run your own like mesh networks and tech and stuff like that, yeah, it's just great. It's great to have that. I mean, normally I'm working in like very rural places where it's like there's nothing. And here I feel like it's a rich place socially and culturally and tech wise. So it's been beautiful to see that, and now bringing that back to Kenya also. And yeah, I think I'll be back here for a longer stay in next like June, July with my who speak Spanish and the Choco for Peace guys we're working with the cow farmers, and also having a lot of good talks about like transitions from the oil industry here with the homestay I'm at, who is a CEO of Drummond Oil. And so like that's been really eye-opening around what that transition could look like. So anyways, just appreciating you guys. It was such a lovely experience. So thank you. Over.
Yeah, thank you, Will. And Will also has he's helped create voucher systems for solidarity markets, where you basically create a community currency from people exchanging things that they already have without needing money, and led us through a really beautiful activity where we wove ourselves into a basket. and he showed how to create an abundant market with no money in the span of an hour as an embodied experience, just to give you a feel of the kind of coolness that Will brings into the room. Evan or Lilian, would either of you like to share a bit of your experience? Whomever would like to, Lilian.
Yeah, sure. So it was nice in the aspect of introducing as well the social infrastructure and what is needed for whatever it is that we want to create as the time comes. And also the understanding of for that importance, whether it's the trauma, whether it is interrelationships and interpersonal relationships, whether it is learning and how do we support the learning from each other, and then taking that to the next level. So for me, that whole aspect was greatly emphasized, and it was lovely to see it being weaved in everything that we did. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Lilian. I think it was evident to everyone that if you don't know your ecological context and you're not focused primarily on the culture, your tech isn't going to work. It's just like, it doesn't even matter. Evan, is there something you'd like to share?
Yeah, I guess it was Barichara was a transformational experience for me on both personal level all the way up to the finding how I could potentially plug into the efforts to regenerate bioregions and save the world, right? So from the micro all the way up to the most macro, there's a fractal experience of transformation that I found very healing. A bit about myself, I'm a recovering heroin addict, and a big part of my addiction and recovery process, which is ongoing, has been isolation. And so it was extremely powerful to me to be in a community of people that I connected with on a deep level. And so I was just in kind of this place of almost like cartoonishly cheesy gratitude and bliss, not bliss, but you know, it was really beautiful to me. And Barichara is just like this fairy tale beautiful place, you know, and there are all these cool people that are into the same stuff, and there's just so many great brains in that gathering that every person I talked to I could connect with and have so I was just in kind of this like bliss state. But I came there for a charitable crypto donation project I started, and like I think as Joe and other people have made clear, it was not like a normal conference with networking events and workshops and stuff. It was something more akin to like a combination ritual group therapy session, seminar, I don't know. And but it also ended up being the best possible networking thing. Like I was just sitting at a multiple tables with people like Will and Antonio and Joe and Benny and everyone who have been doing the same stuff that I want to get into at the highest levels for years, if not decades. And it was the stuff that's coming out of that is really beautiful. So for example, I've been looking for nonprofits to connect with and to put into my platform so people can send donations to. And it was kind of difficult to get that up and going the last couple of months. And now I have a wealth of not just any, but very, very cool nonprofits who might work with my platform. So the users of my app can send donations to projects that are regenerating communities and environments on the ground, which is for me extremely personal, fulfilling. And I guess what was most meaningful to me is I believe there's a spiritual dimension to this project. I mean, not just Barichara, but how it fits into the larger global efforts. And it, you know, I don't want to cast it as some kind of Star Wars battle between darkness and light and imminent destruction of the human species, but yeah, it is kind of like that, right? And so like Penny said, hope. There's hope, and I now see how we each individually play a part in that, which is and Will led this exercise at the very end, where there's a rope, and we each put the rope around the circle, and when we held the rope, we said, here's what I can offer to the effort. And it was very touching, but I started to think kind of spontaneously, the images of when I had died came into my mind. I had a motorcycle accident that I died, and several overdoses. And I had sort of psychologically or intellectually been like, oh, I'm still here. Something was keeping me around because I have a role to play. But it wasn't until I was holding that rope until I realized, now I understand that I didn't die. Something kept me around because I have a part to play in this whatever story is unfolding. And I think that is, in a nutshell, what this experience in Barichara gave me. And I'm just so grateful to everyone here in this room and everyone else. Happy I'm alive and not dead.
Evan, you're getting the biggest hug the next time I see you, just FYI. Does anyone have questions or comments? Questions to the other participants or comments you'd like to share? And if not, I will just share that Penny and I woke up the morning of the last day of the event with this sort of, that like feeling you have in your whole being, like, oh shit, I have to do what? Because we felt like this work like just jumped up like 2 notches. And like there are serious implications, such as we might have to travel all over the planet, like things that we would not have felt comfortable thinking normally. Like, God, that sounds like not what I signed up for. But it's sort of, whatever the life of the universe calls us to do, we do. And that's why we're preparing this new way of organizing that will go beyond Earth Regenerators and find its relationship back to it. That'll go into a new space that brings many different, disparate pieces into harmony. And in feeling that, we can sense very practical things we need to do. So like today, we're trying to get the final on-ramping steps, onboarding steps we already have 2 previously organized communities that we'll be bringing into this Bioregional Activators network, which is the participants of the Refi Barichara event and the Barichara Ecoversity Pledge community. As we figure out what is the way of welcoming others in, where this is a high commitment space, a place where people come who are highly committed to action together. And so we have to have ways of sort of filtering that. This isn't a place for free riders. This is a place for people who are coming to collaborate and do the work. And so there are a lot of delicate elements to that we're still feeling into. That will take some time. But we know that, like if we don't have this thing starting to create coordinating tools for the people who are already in this space by the end of this week, it's already Thursday. If we don't have it by the end of this week, we will not be able to continue this energy. It will dissipate. And so we're like in that birthing moment. And for whatever reason, Penny and I are in the place of holding that forward motion for this step. And we're very aware that that's the parts we're playing right now. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say on that.
I think that was good.
Yeah. So just to say that we get how big this is. We are appropriately intimidated by this. And also appropriately earnest about it. Like, we can feel that reality is shifting.
I have one thing. I
Yeah.
want to share. In our sharing circle yesterday, Juanita, one of the medicine women, she was talking about how, she was talking, the unification of the worlds, but she was talking about it in a way that we all feel the oneness, like we feel the unity, and the fact that we could do that together is very significant. People from afar, people from there, and that we were all feeling that in our hearts, and that that it's that was really powerful, the way that she shared. So yeah. Yeah, so it's that energy that we're wanting to carry forward, that unification. There's sort of the new age, we're all one type thing. And we actually felt it, you know, in reality with these people from two worlds coming together.
Yeah, and actually there's a story of indigenous people in the Northern Andes of there are two worlds and we need to create the third world. So it takes that, you know, the language of third world in international development is a negative thing, right? Like we're better than those third world people, which is a terrible framing, but it's very prevalent. And here the third world is that there's the world of the ancestral, there's the world of the best of the contemporary, like say the best that science has to offer, the best that art has to offer, etc. And the third world is what those two worlds create together. And this is another version of the story of the eagle and the condor, which is a story that was very prevalent in our event and afterwards. That we are in, several people said it in the sharing yesterday, we're in the third world. We arrived. The third world is born. We're experiencing it. And so it's with the seriousness of that, that, you know, the current world is dying. It's taking a lot of life with it. It could take humanity with it. There's a real possibility the third world is stillborn, you know, that it's born dead. But what we thought was that it's being born. And to have people from so many different traditions sampled in like 60 or 70 people was pretty incredible. And when we talked about things like bringing together Giveth with Gitcoin, with Regen Foundation, with the kind of tool that Evan's talking about of people pulling money to go into nonprofits, we can direct the flows of resources toward projects, toward networks of projects. And we're going to be doing that. And so, so not only is the third world being born, like the umbilical cord, we actually have the siphons back to the old world to bring resources and nutrients into birthing the new. Antonio.
Yeah, I was in this thought like the week where I'm just kind of sitting there. I'm like thinking, I wonder if there's ever been this many outsiders and this many local people in Barichara having this type of peace process since like the beginning, like pre-Columbian times. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I don't think so. And to just kind of, you know, birthing this new third world, so to speak, and actually feeling like we are healing the past trauma so that we can actually move forward. And so I mean, as much as we want to say it was, you know, cultural, technological, it was actually, it was a healing and peace process. And that's how I'm now thinking about this differently, is this is a healing process that we all have to go through to get to where we want to go. So I think everybody who was at Refi Barichara got some type of medicine, some type of healing that they knew that they needed to go there to get. And I see that as kind of like how I'm be framing my work going forward. And yeah, just, you know, so powerful to see it all happening in real time.
Yeah, and one other thing just in the synchronicities was, it was what, 2 days ago that Austin from the Regen Foundation sent an email. I know Liliana's seen this email, where the members of this community endowment cohort, 7 different groups, they declared the completion of the endowment phase. Which is that a couple of groups actually haven't received their Regen tokens yet, but everything has been prepared for that to happen. And they're taking those final steps. And they're starting the community DAO stage, the decentralized autonomous organization, which is when they hand over the keys to the castle, where they hand over a significant part of governance of the Regen network to these 7 organizations, these 7 communities, to begin experimenting along with the rest of the Regen network ecosystems. How do we collectively govern something as important as the Regen network? And it was not lost on me. I was aware that the timing of his email overlapped with what was happening in Barichara, and Austin was with us in Barichara. And that it wasn't because of Barichara. That's not why. It's just that these synchronicities are occurring all over the place. And so we were a tiny group of people, 60 people. We were tiny. But we were like a hologram we held the information structure of what is happening in the world. And we initiated a specific process, which will become clear through the next year, which is if you take something like the Common Land Foundation's model and say, how did they activate those 15 landscapes? And the answer will be, it doesn't matter, because from now on, we're going to do it differently than they did. They did it because Willem had connections with billionaires and other people with good hearts. Thank God. I'm so glad that they had that. But we're going to bootstrap this ground up, bioregion to bioregion from here on out. And that is new. Even if you look at the Los Plateau and John D. Liu's documentary of Green Gold, the Chinese government funded that. That was top down. As beautiful as that was top down. Here in Barichara, we are role modeling a process of ground up, of bottom up. And we're already talking, like there was this couple, there's two people, Gabriela and Jorge, who are here from Ethics Hub, and they're both from Mexico. And they're working in a bioregion along the Atlantic coast. They're like, come here and help us. And we're like, well, I guess some subset of us will go to Mexico soon. We're gonna help them activate this. It was just like, whatever this activation of landscapes is, that's what we're now doing. That's what this collection of people are making coherence around. Antonio, I saw your hand come up for a second. Did you want to throw something in there?
Oh, no, I was just going to chat that I think they're doing most of their work in Mexico in the Chiapas region, which is on the Pacific coast.
Oh, Pacific Coast, thank you.
But Mexico is like ready to blow up. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was also not lost on us that when Will was here, there was a morning where we're sitting at breakfast together because we stayed in the same hotel. And I got an email from the Mustard Seed Trust, which has funded grassroots economics. And they told me how much they loved Will when I was talking to them. And he was sitting across from me when they asked if they could give us some money by having us apply for $10,000 to come into Barichara. And what I could feel was this, you know, really beautiful, I think they're Amsterdam based, if I remember correctly, but that this Netherlands-based foundation that works within an ecosystem of these landscape partnerships, doing various related things. They work with Common Land, they work with other groups that we've talked about, that they were asking to give money to us as I'm sitting there having breakfast with Will. And I could just feel like that $10,000, we will apply for it and receive it. It's been pre-vetted. We know it's gonna come once we apply. It will come to Barichara, and somehow Kenya and Barichara are gonna relate. Just Will and I sitting there, I took a picture and emailed it back to them, right? To these women in Amsterdam. Like, it was just obvious that you know, Africa and South America were talking through two white men from North America. How did that even happen? It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter. We could feel it was wholesome. But it was that sort of thing that was just like every moment. I think from here on out, that serendipity is just going to become commonplace. So I don't know, we've now been going for like an hour and 20 minutes, and I want to honor the time. But I want to ask, is there anything anyone would like to share before we close? Including you, Kim. Yeah, Jill wants to.
I was just, you know, the comment that you said, being two white men doing this. I think that it's, you know, it's completely wholesome. I think it's a feeling of colonialism, and it's part of decolonizing. So I appreciate that that's happening. So, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm giving you a hug right now. I don't know if you can feel it. Well, and maybe just as a way of closing, what I want you to just be aware of is that Penny and I now have a difficult story to tell. We have to tell the story of whatever the hell this is, and then invite the people who have been co-creating it to tell it too. You know, what is this thing that we're doing, and how do people participate? How do we invite them in? What are the governance processes for it? How do we gather resources and distribute them to where they need to go? There are going to be a lot of really important conversations that will come with this. And it's really for you to just know that this is happening, and to know that we need to create a container around it to protect it as an incubation because of where it is in its development. Not to exclude the world, but to protect the unborn fetus. And we're just holding that awareness, knowing that whatever we're doing needs to be able to distribute itself across the entire planet or be replicated by parallel efforts or whatever. We're not seeking centralization and control. We're just aware that we're holding a prototyping process and that we want to do as well as we can at sharing it, which also means we have to continue doing well at practicing it. And so, so it's in that spirit that, Frida, just as you said in the chat about the Midwest, Roberta was with us and she brought her friend Leslie, who have both worked with organizations like the Land Institute. Roberta's based in Kansas City, Missouri, and the Midwest, and also Thomas was there from Arkansas. I'm originally from Missouri. The Midwest was represented at this event. It was represented. And the Great Plains and the Rockies and Cascadia were represented. Alex from the Regenerative Community Land Trust, Penny and others from the kind of Colorado region, people from Cascadia like Ryan Christopherson, who works with Regen Ledger and Regen Network, but lives in Oregon. We were representing these bioregions in different ways. And so Evan from the Midwest too, coming from Iowa. Undoing the breadbasket, the Ogallala Aquifer was named, the prairie grasslands were named as part of this, just so you know. We were planetary in an important way. Or at least a slice, a slice of the planetary. We didn't have the Arab world very well, although Kenya touches that in some ways, in Tanzania, in some ways. Zanzibar maybe more, but anyway, there are touch points from this to other places. And what I want to invite, I think these Barichara updates are a place to come and learn, to come and commune, to connect with each other, and also a place to receive an invitation for meditation. So I want to invite you to meditate on this. To invite you to meditate on what it means that some of us have now stepped into that third world. That this new world, the eagle and the condor have landed, if you want to say it this is really happening. This is like Pachamama Alliance talked about this, and now it's manifesting. And it's not like it wasn't manifesting before last week. I don't want to pretend. I don't want to have the pretension. But what I feel is that it is clarifying. It is becoming coherent. And as Penny said, it wasn't in our heads. It was in our hands. We were like, we're builders of it. And this is so different. And it's in that spirit that we need to create a builders community, which is why we're pulling it out of Earth Regenerators into its own space. The builders space needs to grow as a builders space. And we just sense that. Whereas Earth Regenerators, for those of you who know, is a relational space. It's a space for holding us and building relationships and connecting us and scaffolding us. And it needs to be protected for what Earth Regenerators does. And these are not actually separate, but we're protecting spaces in the way that we protected that trauma process within the refi event. We need to protect these spaces so that they can do their part. And in that way, you're all a part of this somehow just by being here right now. So you are implicated, you're responsible. This is your mission should you choose to accept it. Like we basically, those of us who are present to it at the time of birth are responsible to it being born. And that may cause some of us who are here right now to wake up in a sweat at 3 o'clock in the morning with a realization that something big is changing. So just knowing that. And so with that, I just want to, are the fire keepers.
Yeah,
Jan, that's a
totally.
beautiful metaphor.
Yeah.
Just for those who are getting the audio recording, Jan Inglis is saying, maybe Earth Regenerators are the fire keepers. Jan, I had exactly that thought about what Pamela does. Since Pamela isn't here right now, I had exactly that thought about what Gail Burkett does. There are a lot of people I could name. So know what MIDI does. There are a lot of people we could name that are doing exactly that. And so you're onto something, Jan. You're onto something. And I just want to thank you all. For me, it's such an honor to get to host these calls. You know, the Missouri chicken farmer in me wonders how the hell I'm sitting here. And just knowing that we have a lot of work to do, and just here we go, onward we go. So thank you, everyone. And I'll make the recording available very soon, and I'll share it around so you can share it around. Bring this to whoever needs it, because as Jan, who is with us from the Pledge community, said, he wrote a little 3-page white paper a couple months ago called the Regenerative Legion. And he said in the crypto Web3 world, almost everyone was talking about technology, and he thought that they had it all backwards, that we need a tiny number of technology tool builders and countless numbers of on-the-ground regenerative practitioners all over the planet that the tool builders are serving. And Jan is a technology tool builder, and he's good at it. So those of us on the ground want Jan working for us, but we don't need 1 million of him. We might need 10. And so for those who are the tech and tool builders, how do we get this into the hands of as many people on the ground as possible, using the kinds of tools that Will has been developing to create community marketplaces and community economies that are not capitalistic, that are undoing civilization, and that are decolonizing. And because, like, just looking at on my screen, Evan and Will are sitting next to each other, and then Stan is next to you, and then Chad is next to you. That's my bottom line on my screen. Chad, who I know has worked in climate finance and food security and policy making, but also in crypto. Stan, who's created open source protocols for open source technology. Will, who's helped created community markets of real world economies. And Evan, who's creating off-ramp tools for crypto to arrive to nonprofits. I mean, just the 4 of you on my screen. I'm like, what the actual hell can we do? Without all the rest. And I just like short shrifted all 4 of you, right? I just described each of you as caricatures of what you are. But just to see that, like, this is what we have the opportunity to do. So thank you, everyone, for making this path possible, honestly, for making this path is possible because we're walking it together. So onward, fellow humans.